Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah, Kadash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of GreatMillStone who rule well, and shalom to the whole full elect. This is news of the day, and this is an article from financialpost.com. Okay, and the title reads, "In Sweden, cash is almost extinct, and people implant microchips in their hands to pay for things." All right, so I'm just gonna get into it, pull out some scriptures and commentate upon it. So it reads, "Few countries have been moving toward a cashless society as fast as Sweden, but cash is becoming squeezed out so quickly, with half the nation's retailers predicting they will stop accepting bills before 2025, that the government is recalculating the societal costs of a cash-free future. The financial authorities, who once embraced a trend, are asking banks to keep paddling notes and coins until the government can figure out what going cash-free means for young and old consumers. The central bank, which predicts cash may fade from Sweden, is testing a digital currency, an e-krona, to keep firm control of the money supply. Lawmakers are exploring the fate of online payments and bank accounts if an electrical grid fails or servers are faulted by power failures, hackers, or even war." So there's a whole lot said in that. So basically, the government wants one thing: they want the cash to still remain. But if you, as you know, with the quote, I believe said by a Rothschild or someone else of great importance, it's basically, give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes the laws. So basically, whoever controls the money controls the country. So the government may be saying one thing, but let's not forget that they're at a debt when they receive cash from the central banks, because the central bank basically is a model that was first played out by the Bank of England, whereby they controlled the supply of money to a nation. They were only allowed to print and supply the money to the country, and no one else was allowed to do that. But then they offered it at a percentage that had to be paid off, a debt that had to be paid off, and that's how it brought about this debt-based currency. So now the government's saying that they, need to figure out how this is going to affect these people. If the central bank is saying they predict, okay, cash may fade from Sweden, all right, that means it's going to happen. And if they're testing out a new digital currency, that means that's going to happen as well. And that's why you've had an explosion of basically digital currencies, starting with Bitcoin and all these different other ones that you have that I can't remember the names of at this present moment. I can't even remember how to pronounce it. But you have many of these digital currencies that basically are out there, and they're basically the forerunners for what's to come, whereby they're gonna have a one world digital currency. Okay, and Sweden, being well known, well, maybe not well as known, but is basically ahead of the curve. They're basically that country where a lot of these things with the finance and technology is being tested out, experimented at, so to see how it works out for the people. So this basically, what's happening in Sweden is what's going to happen to the rest of the world. Okay. So it says, lawmakers are exploring the fate of online payments and bank accounts if an electrical grid fails or servers are faulted by power failures, hackers, or even war. So they're trying to have this a tight-knit running system so that no one can basically hack into the system and basically utilize it to, out of the hands of the banking elites. All right. Which is a big thing, okay? when you are where we are, it would be wrong to sit back with our arms crossed doing nothing and then just take note of the fact that cash has disappeared, said Stefan Ingves, Ingves, governor of Sweden's central bank, known as Riksbank. You can't turn back time, but you do have to find a way to deal with change. And that's a change that they've brought about anyway, okay? There's actually a change that they've implemented and they're moving towards it. And as you read on in the article, you'll see that ask most people in Sweden how often they pay with cash, and the answer is almost never. A fifth of Swedes in a country of 10 million, okay? So that's basically saying about, I believe it'd be, a fifth of Swedes in the country of 10 million people do not use automated teller machines anymore. So they ain't using they ain't going down to the ATM, the cash machine, to withdraw cash. More than 4,000 Swedes have implanted microchips in their hands, allowing them to pay for rail travel and food or enter keyless offices with a wave. Okay, and that's the RFID chip, the microchip that they're implanting in their hand or in their body. Anywhere in their body is the mark of the beast, basically spoke of in the book of Revelations, the 13th chapter, and many other scriptures. Okay, so that's really, they threw it in there, this one sentence, but that's really the goal in mind, for them to get the RFID chip into all the hands of the people. But in line with the Georgia Guidestones, where it says that they want to basically bring down the world's population to 500 million. They want to have a select few that are upon the earth, okay, so they can keep it in harmony, as they say, all right, and basically have them microchipped so that they can monitor them when they're moving around, and all their monetary transactions. Okay, so reading on. It says restaurants, buses, parking lots, and even pay toilets depend on clicks rather than cash. So basically, everything is moving on the format of a cashless-based society. Consumer groups say the shift leaves many retirees, a third of Swedes are 55 or older, as well as some immigrants and people with disabilities at a disadvantage. Okay, and really the way they're gonna get around that is the RFID chip, the mark of the beast. They're gonna, implant them, the migrants, the disabled, and then the retirees. I mean, unless they're of any importance, they may let them, die off or take the chip, either or. The up in age, they ain't got too much time left on the earth, so I don't believe they're too concerned, and that's why they started with the youth, which they mentioned as well. Okay, they cannot easily gain access to electronic means for some goods and transactions, and rely on banks and their customer service. Okay, and the progress toward a cashless society can end the state's centuries-old role as sovereign guarantor. If cash disappears, commercial banks will wield greater control. Okay. And that's what they want. They already have all the control anyway, and that's why they mentioned they're going to set up a digital-based currency, all right? Because they want to wield greater control. But let's understand that the finances is really at the helm of everything, okay? Because this society is based upon money, okay? Without money, and now it ain't a self-reliant society whereby you have a lot. You do have some people, but that's in a minority, because the majority of this earth is based upon cities, metropolises, okay? A metropolitan form of lifestyle, whereby what I mean by that is that you go down to a grocery store to collect your food supply, go out to restaurants, you rely on travel, you rely on monetary transactions in order for you to maneuver upon this earth. So if they have control over the money, they have control over all movement on the earth. And that's why the prophecy in Revelations 13 is there and says what it says, okay? Which we'll get into. Actually, well, I'll just read quickly, actually, because it's on the point. Okay. Revelations 13 and 16, and he calls of all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So that's all demographics of society. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you're gonna be immobilized. You ain't gonna be able to do nothing in this society if you don't have that RFID chip. Okay, and that's what they're moving towards. That's why the bankers, who the banking elite, control this earth, starting with the Rothschilds on down, the 12 banking, the banking families that run this earth. They control this, and this is for them to come into to establish a new world order. That's why they want to bring this about. We need to pause and think whether this is good or bad, not just to sit back and let it happen. Matt Stillian, the head of Swedish Parliament Committee, studying them out. If cash disappears, that would mean a big change with major implications on society and the economy. Well, duh. And that's what they're heading for. It sounds like a voice of concern, but he's in cahoots, man. And if he ain't, he will be, or he's gonna have to go find another way to be living with this, to live in this society, man. Urban consumers worldwide are increasingly paying with apps and plastic. In China and in other Asian countries rife with young smartphone users, mobile payments are routine. In Europe, about 1 in 5 people say they rarely carry money. In Belgium, Denmark and Norway, debit and credit card use has hit record highs. Okay, but Sweden and particularly its young people is at the vanguard. Bills and coins represent just 1% of the economy, compared to 10% with Europe and 8% with the United States. About 1 in 10 consumers paid for something in cash this year, down from 40% in 2010. Most merchants in Sweden still accept notes and coins, but their ranks are thinning. Okay, so they're basically cultivating an environment whereby the use of cash is going to be redundant. It's not really going to, be used. You're going to have to get a form of plastic or an app, or ultimately the RFID chip, in order for you to be able to pay. Among the 18 to 24-year-olds, the numbers are startling. Up to 95% of their purchases are with debit, credit, or smartphone app called Swish, a payment system set up by Sweden's biggest banks. So see, that shows you the banks are in cahoots, because this app that's being utilized, they already control the debit cards. Okay, that comes from the banks, but they actually got the key app that allows people to actually utilize their bank accounts for payments in retail. Okay, a payment system set up by Sweden's biggest bank. So they're basically moving towards that, man. They're set up where that's the thing. And this Swish, I've done a video on it before. I went into it. They say that you can, if you wanted to split the bill and pay using your card, you can do it with Swish. So everyone that's on it can basically somehow put their percent or their fraction towards the bill to cover their side of the bill. IKEA's, whose flat box furniture is a staple for young households, has been experimenting to gauge the allure and effect of cashless commerce. In Galv, about 100 miles north of Stockholm, managers decided to go cashless temporarily last month with after they realized that fewer than 1% of shoppers use cash, and IKEA employees were spending about 15% of their time handling, counting, and storing money. So they realized that there's an inefficiency in the use of cash because it has a demand on their time. Okay. Patrick Burstein, a senior manager, said the cashless test has freed employees to work on the sales floor. So far, around 1.2 of every 1,000 customers have been unable to pay with anything but cash, and mainly in the cafeteria where people tend to spend change rather than bother with bills. IKEA has been offering those customers freebies. Okay, we said if you want a 50-cent hot dog, be my guest, take it. But next time, maybe you can bring a card. So, they're selling, buying people into the idea of doing so. The test so far suggests that cash is not essential and instead may be costly. He said, we're spending a lot of resources on a very small percentage that actually need the service, he said. So it shows you they're pushing all the pros for the cashless society towards the people because they have the goal in mind of the New World Order and the RFID chip. The nearby branch of Swedish National Pensioners Organization has led protests against the experiment, in part because many retirees like to go to IKEA for a bite to eat. We have around 1 million people who aren't comfortable using the computer, iPads or iPhones for banking, said Christina Telberg, 75, the group's national president. We aren't against the digital movement, but we think it's going a bit too fast. Okay, the organization has been and that's where it is. These people, she's 75, so technology has made leaps and bounds within the last 20 years, man. Really, since the turn of the century, or even going back to the 80s or 70s. You had phones in your car. You had the telephone, and you had the telephone in your car. Then you had a mobile phone. Then you had it swiftly moved from the phones getting smaller and smaller to actually becoming handheld computers in your pocket. Okay, you basically have a laptop. You have a computer within your pocket. All right. So they've seen that change. Even damn, I'm a young man, only 30 years old, and I can see that. I remember the change vividly. So what's some more these people? And the reason why I say all this is because in Habakkuk it says this, man. Okay. I'll start from 3. Habakkuk 2 and 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. What's the vision? The vision is these words of prophecy written inside this Bible. The visions that were showed unto the prophets that wrote them down, and it entailing the time of Jacob's trouble, where you're gonna have the RFID chip, you're gonna have race wars, you're gonna have famine, you're gonna have death and destruction, you're gonna have martial law. All these various things are part of that vision, and it's set for an appointed time. And all this news and this prophecy that we're reading into basically are culminating to the time of Jacob's trouble. But at the time of, and this is how we know that we're in the end, but at the end it shall speak. We're seeing that it's speaking and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it surely will come, it will not tarry. Okay, so that's the point. This change has made swiftness, and you have people out there that lost the faith. There's all roads lead to the end, man. There ain't no other way it's going. Whether you feel it's going slow or not, really, at the end of the day, it's gonna happen. There's no two ways about it. We aren't against the digital movement, but we think that it's going a bit too fast. The organization has been raising money to teach retirees how to pay electronically, but paradoxically, that good effort has been tripped up by the abundance of cash. When collections for training are taken in rural areas and seniors donate cash, the pensioner in charge must drive miles to find a bank that will actually take the money. Talberg said about half of Sweden's 1,400 bank branches no longer accept cash deposits. Okay, so it even shows you the bank how much of a hand the banks have in this, because they don't accept cash no more, accept cash no deposits. So everything has to be on a computer-based system, and that even shows, that makes people depend more upon the cash. The bankings depend more on the bank, okay? Because you can't have no cash under your pillow. If there was a blackout tomorrow, no one's going to be able to access their phone apps to basically use, dealing with Sweden in this example. No one's going to be able to access their phone apps because the system's going to be down, okay? Because of the blackout. You ain't going to be able to charge your phone, and it's going to go into barter, okay? And really, it's going to go into an uproar in the streets. Whereas if you had your money supply, you can still kind of navigate. But again, this is all because the society that's been cultivated is for a society of dependence upon the state, and that's by design, okay? You could read about how it was done in the time of Egypt, where Pharaoh, under the leadership, really the guidance of Joseph, was able to take over his people, which they had their sovereignty. That's where they had their own, they had cattle and land and whatnot, but they had to sell all that to Pharaoh just for the demand of bread so that he can live. And he did that to his own people, and then on top of that, he did that to all the known world at that time that was coming over to him, because he had the blessing of the prophecy to have the better of that situation, having food when everyone else had no food, okay, due to the prophecy of famine. It's more or less impossible because the banks refuse to take cash. So see, the banks are holding it down. Banks have propelled the cashless revolution by encouraging consumers and retailers to use debt and credit cards. I'm encouraging the light word. I believe strong arming is the right word, which yields banks and credit card companies lucrative fees. So, you know, they're making it as a means to, you know, you should do it, but that shows you they have a goal in mind. That includes a bank developed Swish smartphone app. Sweden's banks have cut back on cash in part for safety reasons. Now they're coming with another reason, but we know that it was done by design. But this shows you this is a psyop as well. Sweden's banks have cut back on cash. In part for safety reasons, after a rash of violent robberies in mid-2000s. The national psyche is marked by an infamous helicopter heist in Vassberger in 2009, when thieves landed on the roof of the G4S cash service depot and stole millions. A drama now being turned into a Netflix film. Last year, only 2 banks were robbed, compared to 210 in 2008. So that shows you this was a psyop, man. This was all part of the design which led to led to the cashless society in Sweden. You know, Hegelian dialect. My mind is Salakia, man. But basically, problem, reaction, solution, all the abkeo, all part of the design of the New World Order. A psyop being used, a psychological operation to change the minds of the people into a set mindset they want them in, so they can utilize their goal. So that's what was done with this. Now, when you look at any event, all these previous events, 9/11, all these different things that happen, usually what happens after that is a law change or a great change shift in society. And this is no different, okay? In recent years, banks have dismantled cash machines by the hundreds, okay, showing you the banks were at the helm of this. So little cash is used now that is it has become expensive to track and maintain, said Leif Trogen, an official at the Swedish Bankers Association. There are two proposals by the Swedish authorities to keep cash at hand. Parliament wants just the biggest banks to handle cash. The central bank is holding out for all banks to keep money flowing. The Swedbank, SEB, and other big Swedish financial institutions are fighting the lawmakers' demands, saying it would place an undue burden on them to provide greater access. The demand for cash is decreasing at an ever faster pace, Trogan said. Therefore, it's fundamentally wrong to legislate to influence the demand of cash. So they're saying they're going backwards wanting to supply cash. So get with the times, man. Okay, so it reads on. The central bank has plans to roll out a pilot version next year of a new type of Riksbank money, the digital krona, or e-krona. And it shows you that all the things dealing with Bitcoin and all these other digital currencies and all these different digital databases, you could say, apps and whatnot, that allow people to make a lot of money, they will all run, they're all tests and experiments to see what would happen with the people. Now they're going to bring a government-backed legal currency. And even going back to, I'm trying to remember, man, the governor of the Bank of England, I forgot his name, man, American guy. Basically, he said that they said last year they were looking into what they should do with the digital-based currencies. They're thinking of making a bank-backed digital currency, which ultimately they will do, but they have to go through the process that Sweden's gone through, being that they're the test baby of this all, man. Okay. So reading on, it says that could replace physical cash or at least help calm the current cash conundrum. An e-krona would mean that the functions of a currency backed by the state would remain, even in an all-digital world that is fast approaching. Christine Lagarde, managing director of the International Monetary, the IMF basically, International Monetary Fund, noted last week that several central banks are seriously considering digital currencies. While the case for digital currency is not universal, we should investigate it further, seriously, carefully, and creatively, she said. Ingves, the central bank governor, said, "This is not a war on cash, but no one has argued that this evolutionary motion is going to stop." So all roads lead to what? A cashless society, man. And this is a simple scripture I'm going to end with, because this all roads lead to the RFID chip, the mark of the beast. Revelations 14:9. And the third angel followed him, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb." With that, man, I pray you edify. Shalom.